Trevelyan. Now, the Prime Minister used his visit to the West Country today to try to boost support for an elected mayor in Bristol. David Cameron was here promoting the Yes campaign ahead of next week's referendum. But opponents say an elected mayor isn't needed and isn't wanted. Here's our political editor, Paul Beltrop.
Striding determinedly into centre stage, the PM hoped to swing the result of next week's mayoral referendum.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The audience, mostly Conservative, but some from other parties, favour change.
Let me ask you this. Does this city's politics let Bristol down?
He was preaching to the converted. The worry is that outside political circles, few people care or will bother to vote. But that would be temporary, predicts the Prime Minister.
All the evidence is, when this has been done elsewhere, you get a low turnout in the referendum, you get a relatively low turnout in the first mayoral election, but unlike other local elections where the turnout stays low, mayoral elections, the turnout tends to go up.
It was organised by the Yes campaign, who say they're not sure of winning.
I think it's touch and go. But the more people we get to those polls, the more likely it is that we'll get the result that we want.
The No campaign is lower profile, with no razzmatazz since its launch earlier this month. They don't particularly want celebrity politicians.
It's not as if there's been a surge of demand for an elected mayor in Bristol. This is the central government imposing on Bristol a vote that we don't really want about something that we're not really interested in.
We always would welcome the Prime Minister to come here, but we'd also like him to see the things that we're doing, the successes that people have had here, and that is what will make it great and continue to make it great, not the election of a celebrated personage to be a figurehead over the city.
One thing all sides are agreed on is that they'd like to see a good turnout. In a similar referendum in January in Salford, less than 1 in 5 people bothered to vote. And nobody thinks that's good for democracy. Paul Beltrop, BBC Points West, Bristol.
Elected mayors weren't the only thing on the Prime Minister's mind when he was in the West Country today. Mr Cameron dropped into Filton's aircraft factory too. He recently announced a £300 million deal for 11 new Airbus planes. The government says Britain must do more manufacturing and rely less on banking. But many companies say they're struggling to find the next generation of skilled workers.
To train an apprentice for 4 years, it cost me about £47,000 in salary. And I pay national insurance on those salaries. So if we could take away that 14%, that would help us. That's the tax on jobs at the moment.
But the Minister for Business said today that taxpayers and businesses should share the cost of training apprentices in industry.
We're putting £1.4 billion of taxpayers' money into apprenticeships. Of course, we also have to remember that it's good for the country, it's also good for that business. So I think both the business and the taxpayer need to contribute a little bit to this process. That's the model we've got.
The visit today coincided with a week-long festival of manufacturing in Stroud, which is championing industry and exports in the region. An inquest into the death of a 15-year-old girl at the Cotswold Country Park has recorded a verdict of accidental death. Kajil Devi from West London, who couldn't swim, died after playing with her cousins on the lake 2 years ago. The inquest heard there was nothing anyone could have done to save her. The private hospital at the centre of last year's Panorama investigation into the care of vulnerable adults is to have a new future. Winterbourne View near Bristol was closed down after 11 staff were arrested. 9 of them have since pleaded guilty to the mistreatment of patients. Points West can now reveal the building will be turned into a rehabilitation centre for people recovering from brain injuries.